Welcome, Night Soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I never thought something as simple as downloading a dating app could ruin my life. I am 27, nothing special about me. I grew up in a small town with loving parents, a younger sister named Emily, and a nephew I adore. My family is tight-knit, the kind that gets together every Sunday for dinner. If you met me, you'd say I'm ordinary, steady job in IT, no criminal record, a guy who likes movies and late-night drives. That's what makes what happened to me even harder to believe. People like me aren't supposed to get caught up in stories like this. But loneliness is a strange thing. It eats at you, makes you crave attention in ways you never thought you would. That's why, one Friday night, sitting in my dark apartment, I downloaded Tinder. Swipe left. Swipe right. Profiles blurred together, fake smiles, filtered photos, predictable bios. Nothing stuck. Until Isabella. Her profile stopped me cold. Long, straight black hair, pale skin that looked almost luminous, and eyes that seemed too dark to reflect light. She wasn't posing like the others. Her smile was small, tight, almost pained. Her bio read only. Looking for something real. Midnight walks are my favorite. Something about her felt off, but I swiped right anyway. And the moment I did, the screen lit up with, "It's a match." I didn't know it yet, but that was the worst decision of my life. At first, she seemed normal. We exchanged the usual information, ages, jobs, favorite movies. She said she was 24, worked odd hours at a clinic downtown, and lived alone in a small apartment. She said her family was Romanian but kept their distance. "Old bloodlines," she wrote. "But I don't see them anymore." It was the way she worded things that unsettled me. When I told her I liked horror movies, she replied, "I don't need movies. Real life is scarier." When I asked if she had pets, she said, "No. They don't last long around me." One night, she sent me a message at 3:03 a.m. "Do you ever hear scratching outside your window? You should listen tonight." I laughed it off at first. But when I got up to get a glass of water, I froze. From my bedroom, faint scratching echoed against the glass. I live on the 3rd floor. No trees near my window. No fire escape. Nothing should have been there. I didn't sleep that night. Her texts got stranger. Sometimes she'd reply instantly, as if she was waiting with the phone in her hand. Other times, hours would pass, only for her to send chilling things out of nowhere. "Do you know what your soul smells like? I watched you walk home today. You didn't see me. You'd fit right in here." And the smiley faces she used weren't playful, they felt mocking. I tried blocking her once. Within minutes, my phone rang with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but when I played it back, it was only silence, followed by slow, heavy breathing. The next morning, her profile was unblocked. A new message waited. "Don't do that again." I should have deleted Tinder right there. I should have run. But loneliness makes you ignore red flags. And fear? Fear makes you want answers. So when Isabella asked me to meet her in person, I agreed. The cafe was old, tucked away on a quiet street. Neon lights flickered in the window, half burned out. I arrived 10 minutes early, heart pounding, scanning every face. When she walked in, the air shifted. Isabella looked exactly like her photos, pale skin, black hair, those unsettling eyes. But up close, she was worse. Her presence was suffocating, like the air around her grew heavy. Every customer in the cafe turned to look at her, then quickly looked away, as if they didn't want to acknowledge what they'd seen. She sat down across from me, her movements graceful, almost too precise. She never blinked. Her voice was soft when she spoke, but every word landed like a weight. "I'm glad you came, Ryan. Most people don't. Most people disappoint me." She tilted her head slightly. "You don't want to disappoint me, do you?" I forced a laugh. Of course not. Our conversation was normal at first, work, family, small talk. But her questions dug deeper. Does your sister live nearby? Does your nephew sleep in his own room? Do your parents lock their windows? Every hair on my body stood up. Then she leaned forward, so close I could feel her breath on my cheek. I like you, Ryan. I can see your fear. It makes your soul shine brighter. I pulled back, stammering, but she only smiled. The cafe lights flickered. No one else seemed to notice. The barista kept wiping the counter like nothing was wrong. A couple at the corner table laughed softly, though their faces seemed blurred, distorted. I reached for my phone under the table. The screen lit up. Tinder was open. Isabella's profile filled the screen. But the photo was different now. Her face was stretched, distorted, eyes hollow black, mouth wide and grinning. Beneath it, new words appeared. Matched. Can't escape. I looked up. Isabella wasn't in her seat. She was behind me. Her voice wasn't a whisper, it was inside my head. You thought Tinder was a game. But you've been chosen. And once chosen, there's no going back. The cafe door vanished. The windows turned black. I was trapped out. I don't remember leaving. I don't remember driving home. I only remember waking up in my apartment the next morning, drenched in sweat, my phone still buzzing in my hand. A new Tinder notification glowed on the screen. It wasn't from Isabella. It was a new match. A girl with hollow eyes and a broken smile. Her bio read, "Midnight walks are my favorite." And the worst part? The app wouldn't let me swipe left. That was only one story, but there's another one, and it's even worse. I was 18 when everything happened. At that age, you're supposed to be figuring out who you are, college, friends, first love. But I wasn't like most people my age. I grew up in a small, quiet town. My mom works night shifts at the hospital, my dad left when I was little, and my older brother joined the Navy last spring. That left me mostly alone in a too-big house with creaky floors, a basement that always smelled damp, and silence that weighed heavier at night. My friends had drifted off, busy with boyfriends, part-time jobs, or just moving on with their lives. I spent most evenings curled up in my room, staring at my phone, trying to feel less alone. That's when I downloaded Bumble. I told myself it was harmless. I wasn't desperate. I just wanted conversation. Bumble seemed safer than other apps. I liked the idea that girls message first. It made me feel like I had control. Like I was choosing. That's when I met Ethan. His profile was simple. One picture of him in a dark hoodie, leaning against a wall, smirking faintly. He wasn't handsome in a movie star way, but there was something about his crooked smile that caught me. His bio was short. I don't sleep much. Midnight is when I feel most alive. I swiped right. We matched instantly. At first, it felt normal. I messaged him. "Hey, you're up late too?" He responded instantly. "Always." We chatted about music, books, how boring this town was. He said he was 19, in college, though he never mentioned which one. He told me he'd moved here. For personal reasons. But never explained more. Then his questions started to shift. What's your house look like? Do you live alone? Where's your mom tonight? I laughed it off, dodged his questions, tried to steer the conversation back to safe topics. But he never seemed upset when I didn't answer. Instead, he'd type something like, "That's okay. I'll find out soon enough," smiley face. I thought it was a weird joke. Until he got specific. One night at 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. His message read, "I like your red blanket. The one on your bed." I froze. He couldn't know that. My blanket was red, but I hadn't posted a picture of my room anywhere. I checked my windows, my door, everything locked. I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe he guessed. But deep down, dread spread through me like ice. The messages grew worse. At 3:03 a.m. one night. "Why are you breathing so fast right now?" At 1:47 a.m. another. "Your mirror doesn't show everything. Look closer next time." I didn't sleep for days. I tried ignoring him, but every time I opened Bumble, there he was, online typing. When I muted notifications, my phone still buzzed. Long, drawn-out vibrations that felt alive. One evening, while brushing my teeth, I noticed something carved faintly into the foggy bathroom mirror. 3 words. "Let him in." I screamed, ran to my mom's room, forgetting she was at work. The worst was the pictures. It started with a blurry shot of my house. The caption, "Nice place." Then one of my street, empty at night, taken from a low angle, as though someone crouched in the shadows. Then one of me, sitting at my desk, hair falling over my face as I scrolled my phone. I hadn't taken it. I never even heard a camera click. I wanted to delete Bumble, but every time I tried, the app froze. My phone buzzed with a new message instead. "Don't. We're not done yet." The knocking started at 3:17 a.m. 3 slow knocks. Pause. 3 more. It echoed through my house, not from the front door, not from the windows, just everywhere, like the walls themselves were knocking. I curled under my red blanket, trembling. My phone buzzed again. "Let me in, Sam. I'm cold." That was the first time he used my name. The next day, I told my best friend, Lila. She frowned, scrolling through Ethan's profile on my phone. But when she tried to search him from hers, nothing came up. "Sam, he doesn't exist. Look." On her app, his profile was gone. On mine, it was still there. Waiting. Typing. That night, Lila stayed over. We sat in my room, trying to laugh it off. Midnight passed, then 1. We were almost asleep when my phone buzzed. It was another picture. Not of my house. Not of my street. It was of me and Lila, sitting on my bed in the dark, my phone glowing in my hands. The caption, "Almost time." We screamed. Lila grabbed my phone, trying to delete the app, but it wouldn't close. It wouldn't even power off. The screen flickered, Ethan's face filling it. But it wasn't the same crooked smile photo anymore. His eyes were gone, black pits. His mouth stretched wide, jagged teeth showing. Beneath the picture. Matched. "Now your turn." And then came the knocking again. 3 slow knocks. Pause. 3 more. But this time, they were right outside my bedroom door. We didn't open it. We didn't sleep. The next morning, Lila swore she'd never come back to my house. She begged me to delete the app, even change phones. I bought a new one the same day, brand new SIM card, no Bumble. But the messages didn't stop. The first night with my new phone, it buzzed at 3:17 a.m. unknown number. 3 words. "Let me in." If you think that was terrifying, wait until you hear this one. I was 21, reckless, and far too curious for my own good. My parents raised me strict. My dad a church-going man, my mom a nurse who always warned me about the wrong crowd. My little sister, Emily, adored me, but I wasn't the role model she thought I was. Instead of college, I worked warehouse shifts, slept late, and spent nights glued to my phone. Dating apps were my guilty habit. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, flings and hookups to fill the empty hours. That's where it all began. One night, I swiped on a profile that didn't look like the others. It was 2 girls, standing in a dimly lit room, their faces blurred slightly as if the photo had been stretched or copied too many times. Their names read Mara and Elise. Their bio was short and strange. "We're looking for something fun. Midnight only. No questions." It sounded staged, almost like bait, but something about it hooked me. I messaged. The replies were unsettling. They wrote together, finishing each other's sentences. "You'll like us. You'll be ours soon. Don't worry if you get nervous. We'll take care of everything." I thought it was roleplay. Something kinky. And when they invited me to meet at midnight, I agreed without hesitation. The address wasn't a club or bar. It was a crumbling boarding house on the far edge of town, the kind of place with broken windows and police tape fluttering in the weeds. The night I drove there, the street was empty, silent except for the hum of my engine. The house looked like a carcass in the dark, its roof sagging, shutters hanging loose. The front door opened before I could knock. Mara and Elise stood there. They were beautiful, but uncanny. Mara had long red hair that seemed too vibrant under the candlelight. Elise had dark curls framing her pale, hollow face. Their movements were unnervingly synchronized. When one tilted her head, the other did the same. When one smiled, the other's lips curled too. "Come in," they whispered together. Inside smelled of perfume mixed with mildew. Candles flickered along the halls, their wax dripping down the walls like veins. The furniture was mismatched, rotting, the kind you'd find in a place long abandoned. They led me upstairs to a room with a mattress on the floor. The sheets were stained dark. A cracked mirror leaned against the wall, reflecting shadows that seemed thicker than they should. I tried to joke, to ease the tension. But they just stared. Mara sat on the mattress. Elise stood by the mirror, never blinking. "Don't be nervous," Mara said. "You'll be ours soon," Elise echoed. That's when things turned. The mirror rattled, glass trembling in its frame. I glanced at it, and froze. The reflection wasn't right. Mara and Elise didn't look young anymore. Their faces in the mirror were gaunt, eyes hollow sockets, lips stretched into grotesque smiles. Their skin clung to their bones like old leather. And me, lying between them, dead-eyed, pale, unmoving. I stumbled back, breath caught in my throat. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. They laughed in unison, a rasping, hollow sound that made my skin crawl. "This house remembers," Mara hissed. "We belonged to men once. Sold. Used. Forgotten," Elise added. "But the curse keeps us here. And now you're part of it." The mirror rippled like water, revealing shapes behind it, dozens of women. Their bodies broken, their faces scarred, some missing eyes, some with bruises and rope burns on their necks. Their clothes were torn, stained with something darker than age. They pressed against the glass, silent, desperate, as though trapped behind it. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just two women. This was many. Mara and Elise were masks. The house itself was full of them. I ran. Down the stairs, into the kitchen. But the kitchen wasn't empty anymore. There were shadows at the table, women sitting in silence, heads turning slowly toward me. Their faces blurred, shifting, flickering between human and corpse. "Stay," they whispered. "Stay and remember." I bolted for the door, but it slammed shut. The locks clicked on their own. The candles blew out, one by one, until the house was pitch black. And in that dark, I heard them, laughter, whispers, the shuffle of bare feet across rotting wood. Later, I would learn the truth. This house had once been a brothel in the late 1800s. Women worked here, not by choice but by force, trafficked and sold to men who used them until they broke. Rumor said the madam, a woman named Agnes Harrow, was crueler than the men. She branded the girls, starved them, locked them in the cellar if they refused customers. One night, a fire swept through the house. The madam escaped. The girls did not. Their bodies were never recovered, just ash, bones, and whispers. Some say the fire didn't kill them. It bound them. The curse kept them here, hungry for the attention they were once forced to give. Now they lured men with the promise of sex, except it wasn't flesh they wanted. It was souls. I woke in my car, heart racing, sweat soaking my shirt. For a moment I thought it had all been a nightmare. But my phone buzzed in my hand. Bumble. A new match. Mara and Elise. Same blurred picture. Same bio. Except now, my own face was in the photo too, between them. The caption had changed. "Three's a curse. Midnight only. No questions." And the worst part? My phone wouldn't let me delete it. No swipe, no block. Just that one smiling photo, waiting for the next man to swipe right. Now when I sleep, I hear them laughing. And when I look into mirrors too long, I see them behind me. Not two. Not dozens. Hundreds. And soon they'll want me back. Now, let me tell you another story about my friend Clara. My name is Clara and I was only 18 when everything began, young, reckless, curious, and so sure that the world was something I could bend to my will if I just smiled wide enough and pretended to be fearless. But if I had known what waited for me on the other side of a glowing phone screen, I would have thrown that device into the river and run the other way, though now it's too late for regrets, because I have seen the truth. I have touched the horror, and I know that there are things lurking in the modern world that wear the mask of convenience and connection, things that feed not on our bodies but on our trust, our loneliness, and our willingness to swipe right when the universe whispers no. And I am telling this story as a warning, though maybe no warning can stop you once the curse sets its eyes on you. I grew up in a small town where everybody knew everybody, the kind of place where gossip was currency and secrets were rare, though my family had plenty of its own. My father was a mechanic, hands always black with grease, temper short but heart steady. My mother was the opposite, a woman who lived in books and whispered prayers before bed, someone who believed in ghosts and angels and signs in the clouds. And maybe that's where my fascination with the unseen began, because I would watch her sit at the kitchen table lighting candles for dead relatives and muttering about dreams that meant this or that, while my older brother laughed and called her crazy. And I guess I sat somewhere between them, half skeptic, half believer, a girl caught between wanting answers and being terrified of what they might be. School was unremarkable. I had friends but not many. I was shy but not invisible. I wasn't the kind of girl boys chased, but neither was I the kind they ignored. And when my 18th birthday came and I felt that restless itch of adulthood, I downloaded Bumble not because I was looking for love but because I wanted to feel like I belonged to something bigger than this suffocating town. At first it was harmless, mostly awkward small talk with boys who used too many emojis or men who were obviously older than their profile claimed, and I laughed about it with my friend Kayla, who warned me to be careful, saying she'd heard stories about catfish and stalkers. But the truth is that for a lonely girl at 18, those glowing yellow screens were intoxicating, like holding the entire world in your palm. And then one night I saw the profile that changed everything. The picture was unusual, 2 men this time, sitting together on a faded red couch, their faces shadowed, their smiles faint, almost too faint, like they had been painted onto their lips, and their names were listed simply as Mara and Elise, though those didn't sound like men's names at all, which I thought was maybe part of the joke, or maybe an attempt to stand out, but what really hooked me was the bio. We're looking for something special. Midnight only. No questions asked? I should have swiped left. I should have laughed at the cheesiness of it, but there was something magnetic about those words, like they were written directly for me, and without thinking too hard I swiped right. The match was instant. My heart gave a strange lurch, not the flirty thrill I usually felt when the screen flashed it's a match, but something heavier, something cold that settled in my chest. Their first message came before I could even type hello. We've been waiting for you. I stared at the screen, uneasy, telling myself it was just some line they used to sound mysterious, but the longer I stared the more I swore the photo had shifted, the shadows on their faces deepening, their smiles widening ever so slightly. I shook it off, blaming my imagination, and typed back a nervous laugh followed by, "Waiting? You don't even know me, lol." Their reply came instantly, too instantly, as if they had been typing it before I even hit send. "We know enough. You're alone. You want more. We can give it to you." Now most people would have blocked them right there, but there's a certain arrogance in youth, a stubborn need to prove you're not afraid, and part of me was curious, morbidly curious, so I kept chatting, asking where they were from, what they liked to do, normal questions, but their answers were never normal, never specific, just vague riddles like, "We've lived in many places, but we always return to the same house," or, "We like to keep company, to feel warm again." Their words made no sense, but the cadence of their replies was hypnotic, and before I knew it I was asking where they wanted to meet, my fingers typing faster than my brain, as if something in me wanted this even while my stomach churned with dread. They sent me an address on the edge of town, and I recognized it immediately because everyone in town knew it. The old Harrow Hospital, long abandoned, a looming skeleton of a building that kids dared each other to sneak into, a place my mother had once pointed at from the car and muttered, "That house still remembers the screams." I stared at the screen, pulse thundering, and typed, "That place? Seriously? It's been closed forever." Their reply came like a knife. "Not to us. Midnight. Don't be late." I dropped my phone then, the sound echoing in my quiet room, and for a long time I just sat there staring at the dark, listening to the sound of my own breathing, trying to convince myself it was just a prank, just two idiots messing with me. But when I picked up the phone again, the chat bubble was still glowing, one final message waiting. "We'll be watching. Even if you say no." That was the moment I should have deleted the app, deleted my account, maybe even smashed the phone. But instead I felt that same cold gravity tugging at me, the same invisible hand that had pulled me to swipe right in the first place. And I knew deep down that whether I wanted to or not, I was already caught, already chosen, and midnight was only a few hours away. By the time the clock on my nightstand crept past 11, I had already convinced myself 3 different times that I wasn't going, that it was stupid, that no good story ever began with a girl sneaking into an abandoned hospital at midnight to meet strangers from an app. But each time I tried to set the thought aside, my phone would buzz with no notification showing, just the screen flickering faintly like it was breathing. And every time it happened, the same whisper echoed in my head, not in my ears but inside my skull, the words repeating, "Don't be late, don't be late, don't be late," until finally I found myself slipping on my jacket, grabbing my keys, and creeping down the stairs so my parents wouldn't hear me leave. The streets were dead quiet as I drove, streetlights flickering like dying stars, the radio stuck on static no matter how many times I turned the knob, and the closer I got to the edge of town the heavier the air felt, like the night itself was pressing down on the roof of my car. The hospital came into view like a corpse on the horizon, its tall brick frame rising against the moonlight, windows dark and hollow like sockets in a skull, the parking lot cracked and overgrown with weeds that reached through the asphalt like bony fingers, and for a long moment I just sat there gripping the steering wheel, staring at that rotting structure and asking myself what the hell I was doing, why I didn't just turn around and go home. But then my phone lit up on the passenger seat and, even though I hadn't touched it, the Bumble app was open again, the profile of Mara and Elise glowing at the top of the screen with a new message. "We see you. Come in." My chest tightened, and when I picked up the phone my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it, because the photo of them had changed. The shadows were deeper, their smiles wider, and I could swear their eyes were fixed on me, not the camera, but me, staring right through the screen and into the car. I shoved the phone into my pocket, killed the engine, and stepped out into the night, the cold air biting at my cheeks as I crossed the lot toward the entrance where the door hung crooked on rusted hinges. The smell hit me first, sharp and sour, like mildew mixed with perfume, the scent so strong it made my stomach twist, and as I stepped into the darkness my flashlight flickered 3 times before dying completely, leaving me in pitch black until, one by one, candles guttered to life along the hallway as if invisible hands were lighting them in sequence, drawing me forward into the belly of the hospital. The sound of dripping water echoed through the corridors, each drop ringing out like a ticking clock, and as I walked deeper I noticed the walls weren't just peeling paint but something else, scratches, hundreds of them, layered over each other, as if fingernails had raked the plaster again and again, desperate to escape. My breath fogged in front of me even though it wasn't cold outside, and with each step the air grew heavier, thicker, until it felt like I was moving underwater, and then I heard it, a faint piano melody drifting down the hallway, slow and mournful, the notes trembling with age. And I froze because there was no power in the building, no reason for music to be playing. Yet the sound wrapped around me like invisible hands tugging me forward. The melody led me to a wide room that must have once been a waiting area, though now it was filled with broken chairs, shattered glass, and graffiti scrawled across the walls, but what froze me in place was the sight of 2 figures sitting on a couch in the far corner, faces hidden in shadow. Bodies still as mannequins. And even though my instincts screamed to run, my feet betrayed me, dragging me closer with each step until I could see them clearly. Mara and Elise looked exactly like their photo, same posture, same faint smiles, but their skin was too pale, too smooth, like wax stretched over bone, and their eyes glinted in the candlelight with something that wasn't human, something sharp and hungry. "You came," Mara whispered, her lips barely moving, and then Elise leaned forward with a smile that cracked the corners of her mouth and said, "We knew you would." I tried to speak, to ask who they really were, but my throat closed like I was choking, and when I glanced toward the tall mirror leaning against the wall I felt my heart stop because in its reflection Mara and Elise weren't women at all. They were husks, bodies burned black, skin peeling in strips, hair gone in patches, their mouths gaping open like charred masks, and behind them in the glass I saw others, dozens of others, women with broken jaws, bruised necks, hollow eyes, all pressed against the inside of the mirror like it was a window, staring at me with a hunger that made bile rise in my throat. I stumbled backward, clutching at the air, whispering, "No, no, no!" But Elise rose to her feet in perfect sync with Mara, their movements mirrored like puppets on strings, and together they stepped closer, their voices overlapping as they said, "This house remembers. This house keeps us alive. And now it will keep you too." The candles flared, shadows surged across the walls, and for a moment the hospital wasn't abandoned at all but alive, walls fresh with paint, halls filled with laughter and footsteps, the air rich with smoke and cheap perfume. And I realized with dawning horror that I was seeing the past, the hospital not as it was but as it had been when it was something else, not a place of healing but a brothel disguised as a ward. A place where women had been sold and broken. And the weight of their suffering pressed down on me until I couldn't breathe. I turned and ran, my footsteps thundering in the hollow halls, but no matter which corridor I chose the candles always relit ahead of me, guiding me deeper instead of out, and the whispers followed, dozens of voices layered together, some begging, some screaming, some laughing, until I burst through a set of double doors and found myself in what must have been the operating theater. Rows of seats rising in a semicircle above a cracked surgical table, and as I froze at the center of the room the doors slammed shut behind me and the whispering stopped. Silence swallowed the air, broken only by the creak of leather as the seats above me filled, one by one, with shadowy figures, women with hollow eyes and burned skin, doctors with masks stained black, nurses whose faces were nothing but blurred smears, and I realized they were all watching me like I was the patient, the victim, the sacrifice, and in that moment I understood that I hadn't just walked into a haunted building. I had walked into a ritual, one that had been waiting for me long before I was even born. I stood frozen in the operating theater as the figures stared down at me from the rows of cracked leather seats, their eyes glowing faintly in the candlelight, and the silence grew so heavy I swore I could hear my own blood rushing in my ears. Then without warning the surgical table in front of me screeched across the floor, dragged by invisible hands until it rested at my feet, and a weight pressed against my shoulders, forcing me down, pinning me flat against the cold surface, my limbs stiff and unresponsive like I was a puppet cut from its strings, and when I tried to scream no sound came, only a thin rasp that made the shadows in the seats lean forward as if savoring my struggle. The overhead lights flickered on with a blinding white glow though I knew the building had no electricity, and the sterile brightness made the shadows sharper, their forms clearer, and in that instant I saw their faces, doctors with eyes black as tar, nurses with mouths sewn shut, women with bruises flowering across their throats, and they were all watching me with the same twisted fascination, the same hunger that made my stomach twist with nausea. Then the lights flickered again and I wasn't in the hospital anymore but in the past, the table beneath me still there but the room clean and new, walls painted pale green, the smell of antiseptic sharp in my nostrils, and I watched, unable to move, as a man in a white coat walked into view, tall and thin with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and behind him trailed a line of women, all young, all scared, their wrists bound with leather straps. And he spoke in a voice that seemed to crawl into my ears. "They came for help, but they will stay for service." And when he gestured to the table I felt my body pressed harder into it as if invisible hands wanted me to understand, to relive what had been done here. The women were lined up, examined, numbered like cattle, and then dragged away screaming, and their screams echoed until the vision shifted again and I was in a different room, a ward filled with beds but the beds weren't for healing, they were for breaking, women strapped down as men in suits came and went, leaving behind only silence and blood, and I realized this hospital had never been a sanctuary, never been a place of care. It had been a marketplace of flesh, a brothel disguised as salvation, and the doctors had been the pimps, the nurses the enforcers, and the women who had come here desperate for help had become prisoners until their bodies gave out and their spirits were trapped forever within these walls. The vision blurred, and when it cleared again I was back in the present, the room rotting, the table cracked. But the shadows in the seats were still there, still watching, and among them I recognized faces from news articles I'd read long ago, missing girls whose cases had never been solved, faces plastered on posters that had faded into memory. And now I understood. They hadn't vanished into the night, they had been swallowed by this place. Consumed by the curse that disguised itself as care. I forced myself off the table, my limbs trembling, my throat raw as air finally tore from my lungs, and I staggered toward the doors, but when I pulled them they didn't budge, the wood pulsing like flesh beneath my hands, and a voice whispered directly into my ear, so close I felt its breath. "You can't leave, Clara, not yet, you haven't chosen." I spun, but no one was there, only the mirror leaning against the far wall, the same mirror I had seen earlier, and this time the surface rippled like water before a hand pressed out from within, pale fingers stretching toward me, followed by another hand, and then a face, a girl about my age with hollow eyes and lips trembling as she mouthed the words "help me," but before I could react her skin peeled back, her face warped. And suddenly I was staring at myself, my own reflection crawling out of the glass, her smile wide, her eyes black, and when she spoke her voice was mine, twisted, deeper, layered with countless others. "You are one of us, you always were." My chest heaved as panic surged through me, and I backed away until my legs hit the table, and that's when the doors finally creaked open behind me. But it wasn't freedom waiting beyond them, it was a hallway lined with figures, victims and perpetrators alike, their eyes glinting in the dark as they parted to create a path. And though every instinct screamed not to follow, I felt myself dragged forward. My feet moving without my permission as whispers filled the corridor like wind, telling me stories I didn't want to hear, stories of Ryan, a boy my age who had come here years ago searching for his missing sister only to vanish, and as the whispers grew I saw flashes of him, his wide terrified eyes staring out from a broken window before hands pulled him back into the dark, his voice screaming until it cut off with a snap. And then came others, Maya, a girl whose laughter still echoed faintly through the stairwells, now just a shadow brushing past my ear with cold fingers, and Daniel, a man who had once been a security guard, now a hollow figure wandering the halls with a shattered jaw hanging open as if he'd been silenced mid-scream. And as their stories poured into my head I realized this place wasn't haunted by random spirits, but by victims who had been drawn here, called here, trapped here just like I had been. My stomach churned as I stumbled into a wide ward where the beds still stood in neat rows, rusted frames draped with moldy sheets, and in the center of the room sat a figure in a nurse's uniform, her back to me, her hands folded neatly in her lap, humming that same piano melody I'd heard earlier, and I knew before she turned that this was the one they all obeyed, the one who had ruled them in life and bound them in death. And when she finally turned, her face was a ruin, eyes hollow, mouth sewn shut with black thread, yet her voice echoed in my head as clear as a bell. "Stay, Clara. You belong with us. This is your ward now." My legs gave out beneath me, and as I crumpled to the floor the sheets on the beds around me began to writhe, figures shifting beneath them, patients who weren't patients at all but broken husks who dragged themselves free, crawling toward me with outstretched hands. And as their fingers brushed my skin I felt not just their touch but their memories, their pain, their despair flooding into me until I screamed. A sound that shattered the humming, shattered the illusion, and for a brief second the room was empty, the bed still, the nurse gone, leaving me alone on the floor with my heart racing and the taste of blood in my mouth. And in that silence I realized the truth. This place wasn't haunted because of what had happened here. It was still happening, repeating, feeding, and I was already becoming part of it. I forced myself to my feet though my body trembled like it no longer belonged to me, every step down the ward echoing like footsteps in a tomb, and I could feel eyes on me though the beds were empty again, shadows clinging to the corners as though waiting for me to collapse, and then I saw her standing at the far end of the corridor, the nurse with the sewn mouth, her head tilted slightly as though curious. her hands clasped neatly in front of her blood-stained apron, and though her lips did not move, her voice invaded my skull, gentle and steady like a lullaby. "It's time to choose, Clara. Will you serve or will you suffer?" And before I could answer, she raised one hand and the hallway rippled, the walls melting like wax until I was standing not in the hospital but in a chamber underground, its walls slick with moisture, its air thick with rot, and around me circled the others, all the victims I had glimpsed in broken visions, Ryan with his neck twisted at an unnatural angle, Maya with her smile torn into a rictus, Daniel with his jaw hanging loose, and they closed in, their mouths moving in unison as their voices blended into one chant. "Stay, stay, stay." And when I clamped my hands over my ears, their words didn't stop, they only grew louder inside my head, rattling my bones, shaking my teeth. And then the nurse stepped closer, her presence towering though she barely reached my shoulders. And she lifted her hand again, placing 2 cold fingers against my chest, and instantly the chamber filled with images, a flood of memories that weren't mine yet felt carved into my soul. Women dragged through these halls, their cries swallowed by stone walls, men in coats watching with detached hunger, blood soaking into the floorboards until the wood itself turned black, and then fire, an inferno ripping through the wards, screams swallowed by smoke. Bodies pressed against windows as flames devoured them, and beneath it all the nurse standing unburned, her sewn mouth smiling wide, her eyes alight with something older than cruelty, something that feasted on the suffering she had overseen. And I realized she wasn't just a victim, she had been the keeper, the mistress, the one who had bargained with the darkness to keep her power long after her flesh had rotted away. I staggered back, whispering no over and over, but the shadows tightened around me, pressing against my skin, whispering my name now instead of the chant, and the nurse's voice rang clear as she said, "You've already chosen, Clara. You came when we called, you walked willingly into our ward, and now you will carry us forward." And before I could scream, her sewn lips ripped open, black thread snapping as her mouth unhinged wider and wider, a void stretching toward me, pulling at the air, pulling at my very soul, and I fought against it, digging my nails into the slick stone floor until they broke, blood smearing across the ground. But the pull was too strong, the darkness too deep, and in its swirling maw I saw not death but reflection, my own face staring back at me, my smile too wide, my eyes too hollow, my body standing where the nurse had been. And in that moment clarity hit me like ice in my veins. I wasn't fighting to survive. I was fighting to remember. Because I had always been here, I was the ward's newest keeper, chosen not tonight but long before I was born, a soul tied to this place by blood I never knew I carried. And all the Bumble messages, all the whispers, all the shadows had been lures dragging me back to where I belong. The void swallowed me, and when I opened my eyes I was no longer on the floor but standing tall, my body steady, my fear gone, my hands folded neatly in front of me just like hers had been, and the figures around me bowed their heads, whispering in reverence. And in the cracked glass of a broken cabinet I saw my reflection, my mouth sewn shut with black thread, my eyes empty sockets glowing faintly, my apron white but stained with old blood. And I understood that the cycle had closed, that Clara was gone and the nurse remained, her curse renewed through me. The hospital's walls pulsed with life as if exhaling in relief, the candles flaring one last time before plunging the corridors into pitch black. And the last thing I remember before the silence swallowed me was the faint buzz of my phone vibrating in my pocket, a new notification from Bumble glowing on the shattered screen, the words plain and sharp. "We've matched with you. We're waiting." When I woke again I wasn't sure how much time had passed, the air around me heavy and still, the faint smell of smoke clinging to my hair and skin, and as I tried to move I realized I wasn't in the hospital anymore but in my own bed, the morning sun filtering weakly through the blinds, everything so painfully ordinary that for a moment I almost convinced myself it had been a dream. Just another nightmare stitched together by nerves and imagination, but when I rolled over my phone buzzed on the nightstand, the cracked screen flickering as it lit up with a notification, and my blood turned to ice when I saw it wasn't a message but a match, a new Bumble profile that had appeared overnight, its photo of me smiling but not the smile I remembered. Eyes hollow, head tilted in that same curious way the nurse had once stood, and beneath my photo the name read not Clara but Nurse Keeper, my bio twisted into words I'd never typed. I can heal you. Come find me. I dropped the phone, my hands trembling so hard I thought my bones might snap, and the screen slid to black. But across the glass my reflection lingered for a heartbeat too long, watching me, lips sealed with black thread. That's when the whispers began again, faint at first but growing, not inside my head this time but bleeding from the phone itself, the voices of Ryan, Maya, Daniel, all the lost ones, layered into a chorus repeating the same command, send, send, send. And when I snatched the phone back up I saw the app was already open, my finger hovering over the like button on a profile of another girl, young, 18. Smiling nervously into the camera, her bio simple and sweet about studying nursing in college and looking for friends. And I felt my throat close because I knew her name. I remembered her face from the missing posters downtown. She had vanished 2 weeks ago without a trace. And yet here she was smiling at me through a dating app, waiting for me to choose. My hand trembled as the button glowed beneath my finger, and I wanted to scream, to throw the phone, to run. But deep down I knew I couldn't, because the hospital wasn't gone, it wasn't abandoned, it was alive in me now, in the app, in the cursed thread that bound us all, and my match would be her invitation, her lure, the first whisper calling her into the dark halls I could already hear breathing just beyond my walls. The sun rose higher but the room grew darker, the blinds bending shadows across the ceiling like bars, and as I stared at the phone my reflection blinked even though I hadn't, lips stretching into a smile as the voices rose, and in that moment I realized the curse was never meant to end, only to spread, profile by profile, match by match. A new victim every time someone swiped right, and the silence that followed was worse than the whispers because it left me with only one thought, the truth that settled like ice in my chest. No one leaves the hospital. Not really, they only carry it forward. If you like to listen to my stories then please subscribe my channel.